Yo, okay. Here we go. Here we go. Here we go. Whoa. Whoa, dude. Nuts. Back in it. Back in it. This is, welcome to the show. Welcome to the show. Thanks for joining. We got another show today. Right, so I guess this show really is sort of a mashup of a lot of different things. A lot of different things. We get some news in there, maybe the occasional insight into the human experience. And some of that filtered through my own personal experience, right? Thinking that maybe all these things are sort of interrelated, interconnected, and that you have to try to attempt and hold all these diverse concepts in your mind at the same time, to really see the interaction, right, of how the news affects your life. I mean, most of our lives are not directly affecting the news, because it depends on the news. Some of you might have, some of you might be celebrities actually, but others might have made it into the local paper. Depending on what the story was, it might have affected your life deeply. But that's got to be more of the exception than the rule, right? It usually goes the other way around. That the media, the news, and the shows, and the posts from your friends. Well, I guess social media is in a different category, but all of this just sort of washes over you, unanswered, unquestioned, right? And I guess that's what we look at a lot around here. Is what does that feel like? What is the deal with all this input that we receive, and how is that affecting our lives in ways that we maybe don't directly see happening? That's always my big question. What are the unseen effects? What are the hidden elements of this whole story? How did we get to this point? What are all the pieces that had to come together to have everybody locked up at home? And for the most part, have everybody acting like they're enjoying it. That's quite a feat. To tell the whole planet, hey, what if you went to jail? What if you just went straight to jail? Well, I guess we call it more house arrest, right? What if we all got under house arrest? There wasn't a trial, there wasn't a decision, right? It had nothing to do with you specifically. But one day we got the message, we got the email, hey, you're under house arrest. You are locked inside. You cannot leave. Under penalty of, it's not like they're really shooting anybody in the street quite yet, but right, what do shows showing pandemics and outbreaks that are much more severe, right, where there's the military patrolling around and shooting people on sight that are stepping out of line, right? How do shows like that influence how we behave in a milder situation like we have right now? That's my question. I would argue greatly, right, that watching anything that involves martial law, that would affect your intake, your impressions on what's going on right now. There's no real way around any of that. Now it's good to be here. It's good to hear from people, right? As with all things in this world, nothing really stays constant. And as I personally head into a new phase in my private life, in my personal existence, the rest of the planet seems to be also, right? That's how this whole thing tends to go. Things go in waves. And nothing's ever going to stay the same for too long, right? Because it really is that changing of things where opinions are able to get changed, where progress is able to be made, I guess, at least from the side of the controllers, right? When things are changing, then minds are changing and evolving towards that supposed final state that we may never reach, but that we strive towards, the hive mind, right? Where everything is literally connected. All of your technology, right down to your brainstem, right? That mark, your chip, or whatever you want to call it, that it's all connected, and that nothing is left for chance. Because this whole situation, this whole concept of soft power, the world that we're living in here, where things aren't like people getting shot in the street, right? That's definitely like an older generational sort of thing. I guess there's still countries that are doing that, but the new way to get people to really do stuff is, well, you give them a choice. You give them a very simple choice between two things that are basically the same thing. And then you say, hey, you are free. Go wild. You can choose whatever you want as long as it's one of these two things, right? Coke or Pepsi or whatever you want to call it, the red and the blue. It's that constant symbol. Left or right, either side, choose one. And enjoy your freedom in doing it, right? But that may be a mask. That may be a simple, just little magic trick there to say, hey, here's your choice between A and A. And, well, great choice. You chose A. I appreciate your choice that you made. Enjoy more freedom. Choose these other choices, right? And then it's settling to the stomach. You are having agency over your own life, where, right, the reality of the situation may be the opposite, right? That you are an absolute and total prisoner of the system and the concepts and the world that has been built around you. And yeah, sure, you can make choices. You can choose to do a YouTube show, or you could go out for a jog, read a book. But if the fence has been put up properly, then, well, there's nowhere you're going to find. There's nowhere to go that is off the map. That there's nowhere to even think that isn't still choice A, right? And I think that's a difficult part of this whole community is, right, trying to get to the bottom of things. I think that's why a lot of people got interested in the truth community, as they call it, trying to get to the bottom of things, and slowly realizing that as close as you get, yeah, it just proceeds into the distance like some optical illusion. And what do you do about that? What do you do about that? That's a good question. Now, I guess I have been doing the show for a while at this point, but now that we're in this weird phase, right? I'm trying to figure out how to make this all a little more professional, a little more, well, like a show, you know, something that people can rely on to come to gather around. And basically that requires some discipline on my part to really get out there day after day and give you guys a show. And this week I'm attempting to move forward with all that, right? Because like a lot of you hanging around at home, there's a lot of time now. There's time to do things and time to think about how you would set up your optimal life and what that entails, right? At least in the current form that we're able to practice our lives, right? You may have had a job or been doing something that is it's no longer possible, or it's been put on hold for the time being. And right, there's just layers and layers of uncertainty. It's hard to know what's actually gonna happen at any given week, or what's going down this winter, or what. So which makes it very hard to make plans, right? But at the same time, that may be just what we have to deal with going forward. This crippling uncertainty that keeps you from making any sort of large scale, right, years in the future types of plans, because it's all just unknowns. Right, but what you can do is do your best to shape the day that you want to have, and try to live that day. And right, in order to have at least the possibility of some people over there on the continent, on the American continent, be able to catch this thing live. That means I gotta get up early. I gotta, right, make myself some breakfast and just get in here on the show. But, well, if I can just share my personal experience for a second, I mean, yeah, waking up early has always been sort of a challenge for me personally. It's difficult because I often tend to get wound up in the evening following some rabbit hole, or working on some project, something or other, and right, often have a difficult time falling asleep and controlling that metabolism. And that was that was definitely the case last night. Right? Try to go to sleep and then get hungry and lay there wide awake and trying to figure out what all that is, right? Because you can organize your day, but the mind can be an unruly place, especially in this sea of unknowns that we're living in now. And, well, basically your mind doesn't really follow your plans, right? It sort of does what it wants. And I guess this is something that those controller types have studied and learned a lot about, that, right? I can make a plan and I can have a plan, but executing it is a whole nother experience, right? And so if you're looking at it from a controller type point of view, that's exactly what they're trying to get us to do, right? Through sheer manipulation and I guess many other factors, get you to do the thing that they want you to do, such as, I don't know, what do they want you to do these days? Spend money, hang out on social media and gossip about stuff. Yeah, watch a lot of Netflix. I guess that's what you're supposed to be doing right now. But, right, there's a disconnect there. What is that? What is that in between the impulse, the wanting to do something, and then the actual it happening, right? And that's what I'm trying to figure out for myself. How do I get that schedule down, right? Allow my mind to have the freedom in certain times of the day to drift and have fantasy, right? Because that's the only way that good stuff gets made, at least in the art scene and the music scene. Well, at the same time, having some limits, having some rules, having a bedtime, having a time to wake up, because, right, I think as everything moves to the online space, I don't see a trend any way towards, right back to reality. We will just further the separation between us and the physical space, because it will just get less and less interesting as, right, as humanity's pushed physically farther and farther apart from each other. The cyberspace, the internet and all that's the only solace. And, well, seems like something worth putting your time and energy into. But at the same time, with everybody losing their jobs and I guess the economy not collapsing, but teetering on an edge, right? People don't generally have disposable income the same way, or at least they're not thinking about it the same way as they used to, right? So, because nobody knows what's going to happen. So maybe if you were thinking about spending money on, say, some random internet personality or buying some t-shirts just for fun, that you might second guess those purchases, that you might want to save your money for groceries or something more dire. I know that's the situation that I'm in. So that makes things definitely a little precarious for everything that's happening here on the internet. But on the same side, it's also almost the only option, right? So it's worth putting the energy out there. Definitely getting very personal and in there on that one. I think, well, that's just, as the show evolves, I think things will change, things will go back, but that's what I like to talk about, the cycles. What are they? Can we sense them? Can we do our own research on these cycles and do our best to predict at least a little bit? But yeah, we should take just a brief look at the news. I mean, yeah, I go back and forth constantly. Like, what what are we into? What are we into? Do we talk about the entertainment? Do we talk about the news? Do I talk about these personal experiences? What actually is more important? What is the most worthwhile thing to be talking about at any given moment? I guess that's for me to decide, my own personal struggle, but I think some of this stuff, I don't know, it could be interesting to people. Now, right, because we're talking about these cycles, we've definitely gone through an extended period of, well, it doesn't seem like this is really ever going to end, and well, what the hell? I guess I lost my job, and right, speaking hypothetically, and the kids are home, and I can't cook enough food. There's just not enough time to do the stuff, it's just all so overwhelming. And so that's been going on for how long? I mean, I guess it depends on what country you're in, where you're at, but at least a couple weeks, if not more than a month. And right, this is the sort of psychological pressure that can, depending on who you are, can really get to you, can really almost push you to the breaking point. Right, if you've spent 6 to 8 weeks literally inside with no possibility of going out, then yeah, it's a heavy. We're speaking about torture here, right? This is heavy psychological damage that is being done to, yeah, I guess billions of people at this point, right? Regardless of the deaths and all that, I still see that psychic suffering that is rippling around the world as a much deeper evil than any death that could be visited on us by the natural world. It's this human psychological torture that has been perpetrated. It's dark, dude. Seriously, it's dark. And I think also that's the confusing thing to me about all this. I do have to pull some frames, but I was watching a show, right? Talk about exactly these same concepts that, right, you can't lock us in here. This is against, it's a human rights violation. And, right, this is where you can't let this stand. But that talk is a lot easier to be had when it's a smaller location, right? If it was just a town or maybe even a city, that you would lock down that town and take away their rights, and right, sure, people would be complaining, but you'd be doing it for the greater good. And again, as with all these impressions, coming from media, from stories, or directly from the news, that's what allows this all to go down, right? Because that's playing in the back of your mind. Well, but we gotta save each other. We gotta do this for the human race, right? So maybe we're gonna bend the rules here and there, and that's a key part of this whole indoctrination system, is to constantly push this idea of moral relativism, that you have to decide on a case by case basis everything, right? Whether you get to murder somebody, torture somebody, just absolutely wreck them in the face. All of that is movable, and there's always going to be a scenario where the best move is breaking those rules, right? And that's it really doesn't matter what channel or what show you're looking at. That's going to be the philosophy that's being pushed out, and right, the news isn't going to be any different. We can kill people, we can blow them up, we can lock them in their houses, but right, you have to look at the context. We had to do it because X, and right, it's just I don't know. It's worth talking about, pointing out over and over again that this is a very different moral sort of system than, say, having like hard and fast rules about things that are immovable, right? That there's principles, there's actual things that you can count on being done, because that's just not the case. Everything is changeable, everything is movable. Well, let's just read through this story real quick. Not that there's much to read here. But things are reopening, right? California has been closed a little less than other places, right? And we're still only talking about 56,000 cases, and obviously all of those numbers questionable at best. We're showing this many deaths, which is right in a state of nearly 40 million people. Not that many people. Just saying, right? Like, and everybody's brain is broken about statistics these days, so it's impossible to really even talk about any of this stuff. But right, it's all just seems to be gamed and manipulated into getting you to think a specific thing, which why not? Why not? Damn, it looks like I'm getting my thing cut off here. That's why I gotta do this thing so the whole article shows up in here, right? But yeah, apparently in LA at least, the under the new guidelines, they're opening bookstores, music stores, toy stores, florists, sporting goods, retailers, and others for pickup and yeah, manufacturing logistics can also resume in the retail supply chain. So right, they're starting to spin things back up, right? But even in someplace like over here in Europe, a lot of the stores, well, initially a lot of everything was closed, but at first, at first everything was super closed, but then they started doing exactly what they're doing here in California, opening stores up and letting you go, right, I guess go do a slightly more fun things than you were doing before, right? You can go to the music stores, bookstores, although, right, all of these things are like done, at least in America. You can all sort of just get that stuff on Amazon. And if a lot of these stores weren't already just utterly wrecked, this is going to put a lot of these smaller, right, bookstores, music stores, toy stores, those kind of small boutique shops are just going to go out of business. There's I would think very few small businesses that can last three months plus without any sort of income. That's just not how that works. At least in America. I mean, I know. Just speaking for myself, there's no savings. There's no safety net. There's no sort of real plan and no way to generate enough income to provide said safety net. And I think that's built into the system. That's sort of how that whole thing works. So what are people going to do? It seems like we've barely scratched the surface on the suffering that is going to be unleashed by this whole thing. Right, but I guess what I want to say about all this is that, right, you have to go through these waves. You have to have some sort of progress, some movement. Otherwise, people really will go insane because you can't give them that hopeless, like utter hopelessness, like you're going to be locked inside for another 2 years. That's not going to go well, right? That all of this is towing that balance, that line between absolute subjugation, tyranny, and right, the freedom loving open society that we've all sort of been trained and indoctrinated to want to be a part of. It's that balance. It's that back and forth, and it's, as with all these things, it just always cycles back to that same symbol, the blue and the red, the Joachim Boaz, the duality. And right, if you really understand that concept of duality and can wield it, there's nothing more powerful. Basically, it's the trick in the book when we're talking about your mind, there's just really nothing most people can do to protect themselves against that. And that's a big mission of this show, to try to give you just a little brain armor to protect yourself against this kind of stuff. Now, right? In trying to figure out how to set this whole show up. I still like this idea of, right, rolling the dice. Here we are. We're live. We're live on the internet. And I just hit that refresh button on my feed. And can I pull this over? No, it's not going to let me do that. Technology, right? So in my feed, this Feedly is an app that anyone can really get involved with. It, instead of actually having to go to the news websites and check out what's going on one by one, or listening to Google News or Apple News, which is, right, like heavily curated and also targeted directly at you, right? All of those ways of collecting news, you're going to get a skew or an unbalance in there in some way. And so that's why, I go to the Feedly. There's mostly just mainstream people in my Feedly, although you can add a ton of sources. Whoever's got a website, you can add their source here, and right, I think that it just helps me get a little cross section of what's actually going on in the world, and you can really just recognize the talking points a lot easier because you see them spread out across these different news organizations. And yeah, if we're just going to spin the wheel, what is our first article here at the top, right? UK now has highest coronavirus death toll in Europe. UK just killing it, literally. I guess, yeah, they've had over 30K people die. That's definitely super sad. But why? But why are they dying?
Could it be something to do with Brexit? Could it be that? Could it be that Brexit is what's killing all those people? That it's just like totally unnecessary that they're all dying. That none of the UK would behave themselves. That they would be more like Germany, so one of those other countries would like nobody dying. It's just cause they try to resist the hard mind. What should be a lesson to you? Just to stop trying to resist, just try.
We'll snap dog. I guess that brings us to the end of this particular show, right? I think I'm gonna try to keep them pretty regular to this length, you know. I like to hit that 33 mark and then just cruise on to the next one, or, you know, do the other stuff in my life where I'm also trying to just, you know, figure that shit out. But I appreciate, looks like we got some people in the chat. I surprised you guys are awake, but thanks for joining me. Kim Adams, super fan. I really appreciate you, all your comments, Kim. And the T1000 show, also obviously a cool person. And well, yeah, that's what the show is all about, and that's why I want to get on here early my time, but late evening America time, so we can really get a conversation going here and just sort of hang out with each other, because right, especially now that I'm solo in my apartment under quarantine, the fact still remains, it will always remain, that humanity needs to interact to achieve greatness. There is no greatness without exchange. There's no way anybody could create anything worthwhile if they didn't have somehow some interaction with a society. I feel pretty strongly about that now. Right. And this is coming from somebody that's considered like going full on hermit and moving to the woods and just like, I don't know, writing symphonies by hand. Like that, maybe that would be the most creative, best way to get closest to, right, whatever we're talking about, creation, the true Godhead. I no longer think that's true. I think we really do need to interact. We have to talk to each other. We have to make plans, fall in love, get in fights. There's no way that we'll be able to do our best without that. And that means, I guess, figuring out how to do that in this new time, in the time of COVID. It's that COVID time. Sounds like Kim's buffering. Maybe I said something there that was on the watch list. This is definitely borderline content. Borderline content alert. Be careful what you listen to.
Take a look, guys. Keep